We're now going to go into our next session, and it's an expert panel called Now and Next, the Journey to Smart. What are the practical steps we can take, and what smart new technologies will be fundamental to supporting a transition back to the office? And we've assembled a truly global panel, and it's going to be expertly corralled by Nigel Miller of Cordless Consultants. So Nigel and your panel, if you'd like to join me, switch your videos on, and over to Nigel Miller of Cordless Consultants to take us on the journey to smart.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeremy. Well, good afternoon and welcome to this panel of 30 minutes. I think we've got 5 minutes for questions at the end, but of course you can always pose questions as we go through the session. We'll be exploring smart buildings, the drivers, the enablers, and what are those fundamentals that need to be in place to transition workers back to the hybrid office, I guess we'll call it, as it's being regularly or increasingly known. And we'll debate really within the panel and then address those questions coming to the end. I'm Nigel Miller. I'm Managing Director of Cordless Consultants, as Jeremy said. We're a workplace technology consultancy, completely independent, and we carry out both strategic and design consultancy across IT, AV, and increasingly, but for the last 10 years, have been looking at smart. But boy, has that started to peak just recently. I think those new heights of interest have really started some different dynamics. So it's great to be here debating some of that. A few of the projects that Cordless have been involved in over the years, just a few notable examples. Francis Crick Institute, that massive health and well-being centre right by the St Pancras station of 1 million square feet. We've just finished on Pernod, the drinks company's new HQ, which is one that's very close to my heart. And of course, we were involved in the very early strategy for 22B as well, which has been debated and talked about a great deal on previous sessions. Personally, I've worked in the IT industry since God was a boy, working for such companies as Digital Equipment, HP and Unisys. But I think it's this moment now that we're starting to see my dreams of IT really becoming a part of people and really interfacing with people like we've never seen before. I'm joined on the session by an expert panel, international. We were just debating that we're spread quite widely apart, so we're hoping there's not too many delays in the wires. From both the client side and the technical provider side. So we've got a good spread here. I'll allow people to introduce themselves because they'll do a far better job than me. So if we start off with Mohammed and then go on to Juuso and move around from there. Mohammed.
Thank you, Nigel, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone on the panel today and on the webcast. Very pleased to join you today. My name is Mohammed Hilal. I work for Schlumberger. I'm the Global Facility Manager based in Houston, and I have 15 years experience in the oil and gas in different roles. So it's very interesting to have this conversation and join you today.
Thanks, and I'm Juuso Ilmelä from Haltian, located in Helsinki, Finland. And I've been actually doing this, let's say, digitalization and new innovations for the past 20 years. So it's been really exciting to be in this PropTech event.
All right, and then to end, my name is Yannick. I am a team lead for a team of smart office advisors at Mapic in the Netherlands. And we serve customers like PwC, Heineken, Unilever, Deloitte. Of course, now with their back to the office strategy, but just in general, with providing a great employee experience with our smart office solutions.
Okay, thank you, folks. Well, we've heard so far on various sessions how smart technology is starting to support the workplace, some of the considerations and obstacles that are coming along the way, and we'll be looking a bit deeper into some of those as we go on this session. My viewpoint is that the pandemic, which is really has made such an incredible difference and has accelerated the smart workplace, certainly from our perspective, from a desirable. A lot of our clients were saying, yeah, that would be a nice thing to have, to a must-have. It's just moved that agenda on 2 to 5 years almost in a snap. And I think will be fundamental really to supporting our workplaces, hybrid or whatever workplaces we have of varying sizes going forward, from a safety, a sustainability. I think efficiency will come into that as well, production, and as we heard in the last session as well, attractiveness. How do we attract people back to the workplace when we get there? Because there's one thing for certain, and that is when we get into this new world of work, the dumb building won't cut it. So we need to move fast, I think, and there will be a lot of change along the way. So with those points in sight, let's start with probably the biggest one, which is attraction. How do we start to address our workforces and make the workplace attractive to them, and to get them coming back into our spaces and feel safe and comfortable in those? So let's throw that one out, and Mohammed, maybe you could start off with.
Sure, Nigel. I think it's a very valid point what you are bringing up. If you look to what happened in the pandemic, we suddenly, without any planning, had to be pushed to the virtual world and working from home. And apparently, many of us found this productive. So it wasn't really, despite the tough experience of the pandemic, the reality is that we continue to be productive, many of us. And in many of the surveys that either we have done internally or I have seen other organizations did, majority or the big number of employees really are enjoying, if you like, working remotely or working from home. So to bring those back to the office, it's a bit of a challenge. It has to be an attractive environment. It has to be for a purpose. So you go back to the office to engage and collaborate. You don't want to go back and sit in front of your screen and isolate yourself. So to enable that environment, I think this is where the challenge is. I think that part of being attractive is making sure that the environment of the office is inclusive for those who have experienced more or less a year of productivity and flexibility as well. So I think this is one piece to consider. The other part you mentioned about sustainability is very interesting as well. If we are able to show everyone the contribution of less commute, less carbon emissions from specific facilities, and the role that every one of us is playing, then again bringing them back to the office means that we have to reconsider this, and there is an impact to be considered here. So I think making sure that you include the organization employees into the decision of coming back, listen to them, change the environment a little bit to be more attractive and inviting for them is a key on that piece of attractiveness that you are touching.
I think we'll that's absolutely true, and I think we'll dig down into some of those points you've raised there. I can see how that's starting to split out into a number of key areas. But as an overview, let's just go around the panel. Juuso, maybe you could comment as well, and then we'll come back to things such as safety and sustainability in a bit more detail.
Yes, I totally agree with Mohammed when talking about this kind of a returning back to office safely. I mean, you need something else than just let's say bad coffee and a bad chair to go to go back to the office. I mean, you can actually have a good chair maybe at home and a better coffee at home. So I mean, what are these kind of triggers that triggers people to go back to the office, and that comes to the user experience of the building. And also digitalization. I mean, that obviously allows us to do different kind of new innovations in the buildings, and making sure that the people are attracted to come back to the office. And also this kind of what we are kind of missing in today's this kind of all online world is that this kind of accidental bumps or serendipity to different people that you don't necessarily are able to do, and having these kind of conversations and these kind of discussions with different people is kind of a key for people to return to the office. But then again, if you're going back to the this kind of a safety and healthy, obviously those are big questions that when people are and employers are feeling safe to return to the office. So there are a lot of aspects what the facility management can do and should do to make sure that people are feeling safe. So it's a big topic.
Yeah, it certainly is. And Yannick, you got Any to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, attractiveness, of course, is about creating a place your people love to come. But I think attractiveness also is to make it as convenient as possible to come back. So, of course, right now, people are used to letting the company know when they're planning to come back to the office because of social distance measurements that you just need to allow only a certain capacity to come back. But if that will remain after COVID, because of course companies are either moving down real estate or maybe just reducing the amount of desks at their office, you don't want to create a situation where every individual needs to come to the office and they need to book a meeting room, a desk, need to know which colleague is there, a parking spot, know that they're for lunch. So 5 or 6 different acts to perform before getting into the office. So I think if you want to make most out of it and make sure that people still feel welcome, I think you should make it as convenient as possible to come back. And by that, of course, being get them more attracted to come back to the office.
Yeah, and I completely agree. The that attractive piece, getting people to come back, is going to be absolutely key in businesses being effective. And it's interesting, today we saw Goldman Sachs on the general news saying that they didn't believe that home working was really for them at all, and that people really should be back because they want people to be able to train and learn and have that ecosystem, if you like, that's within the office. I think others, and I think this, we've seen the extremes. Everyone will be working from home in the future. Personally, I think that's a bit of a mistake because I think it's the stuff that happens, it's those connections, the social aspect, the stuff that happens between meetings and production. It's the water cooler moments, as known in the States, when people can actually interact and stuff actually gets done at those times and ideas generate, as well as, of course, the physical learning and so on. So I think for the majority, a return to the office and getting people who come into the office some of the time will continue to be a really important piece of that. I think Mohammed first mentioned the safety aspect, and I think a big barrier to, to some anyway, even when we've had all had our jabs, will be the safety aspect. So let's dig into that one and see if there's anything there that we should really be looking at. What do we mean by safety? And I guess from the top of my head, I'm thinking of things such as touching surfaces, maybe the airflow and how clean that is, sanitization and so on. How can those sort of things be managed easily within the new workplace? So let's start now with Juuso.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this kind of it is a lot of take for this kind of facility service and cleaning personnel. I mean, how do they know, for example, how do they know what areas have been used, what desk has been utilized, when to do these kind of what kind of let's say clean desk policy they might be, or these kind of things. So obviously, I mean, this data and IoT, these kind of digital tools are able to help this and provide this valuable data for this for example, for the cleaning personnel and facility service companies. And then if you're going into this kind of what are these healthy and let's say conditions and let's say airflows and so forth, I mean that comes then more maybe towards the building automation systems, but at the same time they would also need to know that where and how many people have been in the different kind of locations and so forth. So I think that's kind of a things that what we have to consider. But in my opinion, and what we have seen is that obviously these kind of digital tools and digital solutions enables and collecting the data at the right time at the right place and providing that in the efficient way to the right personnel, and maybe even to the right people directly. So there's no need to actually having this kind of a, let's say, centralized place to actually get everything done. But rather than having this kind of that okay, we collect data, we actually provide the data at the right time and right place. So that's kind of how we see it.
Okay. And what about, I was thinking around also the touching of surfaces. It was only just before the pandemic that lots of companies seem to have adopted an iPad and put it on their reception so that people could check in. And I was always a bit dubious about it anyway. I always felt like, well, how often does that get cleaned and how many fingers have been over that? I don't suppose we'll be seeing many of those going forward, but I guess beyond that, people will still be reluctant to touch other common surfaces like light switches and control panels in meeting rooms and so on. So I think maybe there are ways to make that a more personalized service. Maybe Yannick, you could comment on that.
Yeah, well, actually, like we do see an increasing demand in for example, digital signage screens where there's no need for interaction. You just can get information straight out of it. So I'm not sure if that might be related to each other, but I could imagine. And of course, I think it's really we have in Mapic too. We have a mobile first strategy. So I think everyone currently has a smartphone where they can organize everything from. Of course, most often people are used to doing it the same way as they already did before COVID. So if you look at, for example, these room displays, yeah, that's what people were used to. But there's so many other different ways to in this case, for example, book meeting rooms via your personal device. That I do foresee that there will be a trend going towards doing more from your personal device instead of doing stuff from touchscreens. On the other hand, I also think if you talk about safety, that it's also about the feeling of safety instead of just the practical stuff. So what we also see is that whenever people, you don't have to just, I don't know, book a seat, but you also can see that the amount of seats are actually not filled up. So you know that there won't be too many people in the office, and you will be certain that whenever you arrive there also won't be too many people. I think that feeling of safety is also really important to create. And of course, technology is the easiest way to do so, but there's other ways for that too. But yeah, that's the things that we see.
Quite agree. I do wonder whether voice systems will come into play a lot more as well. You know, actually using audio instruction could be a bit chaotic if it's anything like my household, but one would hope that there'll be better measures there. And finally, Mohammed, then on that safety part, you've got very different environments, I'm aware. So not all of yours are a sort of standard hybrid workplace, or won't be, because some of them are have to be much more safety conscious anyway by the nature of the work.
No, it's a very valid point, Nigel. And if you look to if I talk specifically about the oil and gas industry in general, not really. Some of the jobs didn't have the choice to work from home. You know, because of the nature of the job, they had to continue going to say the operational base or some of the manufacturing centers everywhere on the industry. So in fact, they didn't really work from home versus those who can do this work from their home. So we had to adapt as as individuals quickly, even if the technology was not ready at a certain stage. And what you had to do is really to learn from others and to start initiate things like putting masks and social distancing and making sure that people use maybe gloves in some cases or hand sanitizer and so on. So I think the personal proactiveness and responsibility is a key element as well. You know, beside the technology, which is a very important factor, but you still have a human element that has to be there, especially in places where you didn't have a choice. So this could be one comment from my side. I think the other piece, and this is back to what Yannick mentioned, the more you give visibility and clarity to people who are using the facility, the better. So if today I know that there will be that number of people in that floor or in that office, you know, so I feel safe to go and book my space and sit there, the better. I think the more we are able to enable this to people to use the facility within the pandemic time, it's of course the better. And again, I don't think this pandemic will be our last challenge. You know, I think there might be more challenges to come. So the more we adapt and are ready to adjust ourselves, of course, the better.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So moving on to one of the other pieces that was mentioned, that's attracting people back. I guess they're going to want an efficient, an office that works, a workplace where they can come in and things, you know, as already mentioned by Yannick, having a multitude of things to need to book isn't ideal. It just puts more workload on something that's already probably being viewed as having to make an effort. So what about the efficiency side? And I'm thinking of things around appropriate VC systems. You know, we're all used to using these laptop-driven systems now. when people go back into the office, they're going to find, I suspect, a lot of them, that they can't use those systems well in meeting rooms that have been kitted out in other ways and are somewhat locked down. And certainly given a video conference from an open floor workplace isn't ideal, nor is sitting in a 20-person meeting room but not able to use the mics and screens. But I just wanted some of the other thoughts around efficiency and how the smart office would actually improve people's working lives. Let's start with Yannick on that one.
Yeah, I think we were actually indeed, when we prepared it, of course, had a discussion like, what do we think that's going to happen? If you were at the office, will there be 10 people in a booth connecting with the people from home in the same meeting, or how is that going to work? And we actually, of course, did a lot of user testing, of course, because we just want to know more about, what kind of changes employees currently feel about when they return to the office, but also, of course, to build new product features on. And of course, the main thing that people all mentioned together, so most of them had different opinions, but one of them was exactly the same, that they're coming back to the office to see their colleagues. So I think making sure that whenever you create a sort of added value almost for people to let the company know when they're planning to come. Of course, with that, you can have the whole capacity management, but when you plan to come, and that you will first be able to see which people will be there, that you can invite your team, and that you maybe don't even have to book a specific meeting room, but you just let a solution know, I'm coming back to the office and I need a room, just book it for me. And then somewhere during the day, I will have a meeting room with video collaboration, because 2 people are working from home and 4 of my team are working at the office. And we do see that those kind of concepts, almost like making a frictionless suggestion. So almost like when you book a seat to a cinema, you always get the suggestion, which works as efficient as possible. But still giving people the autonomy to manually sort of overrule the suggestion. I think that's going to be really important for the upcoming period. So and in my opinion, but maybe I'm a bit biased, of course, because I work at a company like Mavic, but I do think that having some kind of smart office technology to manage this process, you can't really live without. And we also see that with the conversations that we have. So we are the first person that our potential customers speak to most often. And right now, it's not just a question if they're going to do something with smart office solutions, but which one is the best suited to my needs. And I do think that it's very important that whenever you pick one, that you do see that they support this hybrid working model in a good way. So that's really what we see, that knowing which people are at the office is the most important thing to start with.
So I guess an efficient, seamless, if you like, workplace that gives us a lot more productivity should naturally lift as a result of that, which is the panacea of the whole thing, I guess, and certainly for organizations, because an optimized environment with happy, efficient, safe-feeling employees who are connecting and sharing ideas are going to up productivity. And I think you've probably elsewhere on this session, seminar, heard the 3-30-300 rule, which is the 3, which is utilities, the 30, which is your space cost, this is a per foot cost, and the 300 for your employee. So obviously increasing productivity, the employee's output will have the biggest effect on the business itself. So there are steps to take to get there. I can see Jeremy waiting to pose us with some questions.
Yes.
I think there's some steps to do all this stuff, having the right infrastructure in place, and so on. I guess they can all be things that could be answered as questions, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think the journey to smart has struck a few chords with our delegates. Let me come in here and just pose a couple of questions to our expert panel. We've got one from Erica Ramirez. How do you make employees feel safe to return to the office when they see the news and the media still having high infection rates? Some may feel like we aren't ready. So can Smart address that?
Wow.
Who'd like to
Any takers?
I can start and then maybe ask my colleagues to jump in as well and comment. Yeah. So I think that the first piece to make employees feel comfortable that you personally feel comfortable to tell them to come back to the office. So if, which means that as an organization or as leaders, you need to have some measures in place that aligns with the government, with the authorities, wherever we operate, that makes sense to tell people to come back to the office. So I think this is really the first step. We cannot invite people to come back to the office if we are personally not feeling the same comfort of doing so. I think the second important piece, as I mentioned maybe during our conversation, is to share facts and data. So these facts and data is about the current rates of the virus, the current vaccination rate, the cases, the preparations in the office, the process coming back to the office, how people, the process also, if there is an infected case in the office, what people can do. So the more clarity, the more transparency leaders and organizations are, I think the more people will be, if you like, comfortable to take the choice and come back to the office. And of course, the last piece, in my view, is listen to every voice in the team. Some people will be more exposed or more vulnerable to come back to the office. So you have to respect that and not really bring those to the office, while others, maybe the office environment is for them more productive and they're not really as productive at home. So they need to come back to the office. So these variations in the team are important to be considered as well. These are really my comments on that one.
Okay. Let me give you another question, because I think Juuso and Yannick, you may want to come in on this one. This is from Darren Wheel. Much of this event touches on data, in user movements and use of space and storage. How do you make people comfortable with the big brother aspect of that, knowing that management can track your movements and may be very judgmental and negative, depending on what that shows?
That could be a lot of kind of a loaded question, but I'll take a crack of it. So I think obviously, I mean, GDPR is kind of a really important for everybody, that having your personal data as your personal data and where you are actually working and how are you working. I mean, that's important, and everybody should be treated equally in that sense. And obviously, I mean, having anonymous data that could be utilized, for example, on this desk occupancy. It doesn't mean that you need to actually have the information that who has sit or been in these areas or in these desks, but it's just enough information that it's been occupied by somebody. So I think those are kind of important things to be clarified, and have to agree with what Muhammad was mentioning about this kind of a transparency. Obviously, with the data, you can actually bring in a lot of things, and you can also actually provide that information with clearly to all the users of the building, and that's kind of coming back to the user experience of coming back to the office and returning to the office safely.
Okay, this is a question from Kevin Richards. Are there any new guidelines on how to design new offices being constructed post-COVID-19, knowing that there may be a percentage of the original population who will continue to work from home? How do we find the best way to find a balance to ensure unnecessary spend is minimized? I suppose what he's saying is you don't want to build a space that's not going to be utilized.
Well, actually, maybe I can answer this, because we just had a sort of a back to the office best practices study that we did with the shifts that are booked via our solution. So we have like 1 million shifts booked. So definitely something interesting to say about that. And there was a couple of things that we saw. So one workplace concept that has started to get very popular is a sort of anchor concept. So normally you would have teams divided in departments, for example, or just a free-for-all concept. But what you now see happening is that you have, let's say you have a floor area which is shared by 3 different teams. You won't have a sort of cut where the marketing team and the sales team can sit, but you have a sales anchor and a marketing anchor, and they can sit anywhere, but most of them will sit around the anchor. That gives you a lot more flexibility if you, let's say, want to make it possible for the entire marketing team to come at the same day, and then the next day you want to make it possible for the sales team to come at the same day. Then there's another thing. What we saw was that if you looked at the data of how people were coming back to the office, about 30% was booking their shift at the same day. So they really want to come back to the office like ad hoc. They decided this morning, I want to go to the office. So I think you should support that, of course. And about 70% pre-booked it. So what we now advise our customers is that when you are thinking about the amount of flexible workplaces that you will make bookable up front, and the amount of flexible workspace where people don't have to book them. They could just walk into the office and have a seat there. That the 70-30% is a pretty good number to start with. So I think those two things are a pretty good, at least a starting point to base your workplace strategy on.
Okay.
Maybe quickly to add on that. I mean, obviously you need to make the spaces so modular and so easy to actually change. I mean, even if it's a digital side or physical side, I mean, that what kind of areas you might have, for example, collaboration and so forth. So those has to be made really, really easy, and that can be done on the digital twin side and doing that quickly.
So there's lots of other really good questions, but sadly we're out of time. Do have a look on the stage chat, and if you can answer some of the questions that are up there. So I'm going to hand back now to Nigel just to close the session with some couple of comments and thanks, and my thanks to the panel. Nigel.
Okay, thank you. Well, clearly there's a lot of change afoot. I think that whole thing about how we size and shape our offices going forwards is still in the balance. I mean, the technology will have a massive impact and on that, along with safety, the sustainability, and a whole range of other areas. But the actual physical space and how much is needed per person, new rules, I think is still in the balance. And it will depend on how much technology is deployed to support that. I serve on the research committee for the BCO, and that is certainly up there on the agenda with the British Council for Offices. So it's something being actively debated. In the future, we'll see more as well. I think gesture, voice systems, increasing levels of artificial intelligence supporting us. But I think for the time being, we're all trying to help, and certainly my company are heavily involved in helping our clients to identify the lowest hanging fruit. It doesn't have to be a complete change. There are technologies that can be easily installed and are open, don't put people down a cul-de-sac. So hopefully we'll get there one way or another. But what I will say is I think this whole COVID thing will sound the death knell for the dumb building, and we'll be back into a world where technology really is supporting us well and truly. With that, I'll close the session. So thank you everyone for support, and just last words from Jeremy.
Well, thanks very much to Nigel, to Mohammed, to Juuso, and to Yannick. Everywhere from Helsinki to Houston, that was the journey for Smart.